really don't. I'm not sure. Hopefully everybody can hear me. You guys let me know if the audio is there. For some reason, it did not want to allow me to go live. It was saying, no, you cannot do that. And so I found a workaround. Hopefully you guys let me know, chime in, let me know if you guys can hear me. Tonight, we're going to talk about stroker motors. But before we get there, I went out today. For some reason, I was feeling like today was going to be, for some reason, it was going to be a good snake day. So and even it was late, like I was working on a video or on a story. And I thought, okay, I want to get this part of it done. You know, always set goals to get stuff done before you go out and, you know, do the things that you have to do before you do the things that you want to do. And I just decided I want to go out, and there's a place over here where my son practices soccer, and I found snakes there before. So I thought, I'm going to go over there. I've been over there a long time. I'm going to go check it out. And so I found a gopher snake, a pretty good sized one, very, very healthy, strong gopher snake. In fact, I was on the phone with Jimmy, and I said, Jimmy, I'm going to have to call you right back. I got to reach down. I got to grab the snake. So it was a good gopher snake. I got a video of it. I put it up on my Instagram if you guys want to go check that out. It was a good snake. And then so I walked around and, you know, just I love it. I love going out there. There's lizards everywhere, but and big mice, field mice and stuff, which is why the snakes are there. But you know, it's just good to get out and walk. I get to see geese and ducks and just all kinds of cool stuff out there. So it was good. That snake I saw immediately. Like as soon as I stepped out of my truck, I walked over to this concrete pad where I have seen a number of snake sheddings in the area, because there's a place to go under the concrete pad, and that's a really good place for snakes. And I'd seen that before, and I didn't see anything going into that hole. And I walked over to another concrete pad that had some sort of thing on it out there. And I'm just standing there and talking to Jimmy, and I look down. I'm like, oh, that's a good sized gopher snake. And so I had to call him back after I captured the snake. It's very cool. And then I walked around for an hour or two or whatever out there, looking at various places, lifting things up, going out in fields, and it was awesome. So you know, it was a day well spent. Then I came back and did work on the Sprint Turbo. I told you guys I took the head off, and so what I did today was I did the water test to see if something was leaking, and they were, because I didn't really see the head gasket. Like I've seen lots of blown head gaskets before, and this didn't look like that. And on the Sprint Turbo, you could see it. You know, normally when you blow a head gasket, it blows to a water passage or blows to another cylinder or something, and I didn't see any evidence of that. But what I did find is when I poured water in all three of the exhaust ports, there's water pouring past one of the exhaust valves. Interestingly enough, when I did it on the intake side, there's water pouring out of one of the intake valves. I pulled the exhaust valve out because I wanted to look at it. I just wanted to see if there was something in there, like did something get stuck there? Was causing this whole thing? I mean, did I pull this whole motor out just because it had, when I could have just tapped it and probably fixed it while it was running? But it looks to me like the valve and or the seat are burnt. So it needs a valve job. It might need a seat. I don't know how much more material we can take out of that and sink that valve, but it might clean up, you know. But when we poured it on the intake side is leaking on another cylinder, and two of the cylinders seem to have decent compression in them. When I did a cranking compression test, that center one did not, but the other one did. And so again, I didn't take that intake valve out, and the reason I didn't is because the thing has to go in to get a valve job done on it and get surfaced and all that anyway. So it's not a big deal. But I'm thinking just with a valve job and the surface, then I could put it back on there with that kind of head gasket, put the stock bolts and all that stuff back in it, and it's going to run fine. As long as we get the Haltech system on it. I talked to Ish, and so that shouldn't be a problem. So we should be able to run that, and that would be good. I've got the clutch off of it. The clutch looked like it was in decent shape. It probably would still run. I'm going to have the flywheel surface. We'll probably put a stronger clutch in it. But I may not put the stronger clutch in it until after, because we're just going to do some testing initially with the stock motor and kind of see what's going on there, and just kind of see where we take that. And then I actually have a couple of things I want to test. I want to test my other motor and see where we get with that. And then we want to go to the, you know, Super Wazoo motor. It's just motor swaps. And quite honestly, I can just, if we disconnect it from the transmission, I can just grab the motor and pull it out. It's amazingly not heavy. So if I can do it, then obviously anybody can do it. So I got to do that, which is good. I like that diagnosing part of things to see about getting them fixed. Because now that I know what it is, then immediately from there you go to the okay. Here's how we fix that. We know what the problem is. Here's how you fix it. Pretty easy. And then it goes back to being a working running unit, which everybody wants that for their 3-cylinder motor. So I can have a whole bunch of those. But today we're talking about stroker motors and not stroker 1 liter motors to make them into 1.1 liter motors. We're talking about when do I normally recommend people do, larger displacement motors. So we've talked about this before on the LS side, 4853, you make a 383, a 6 liter, you make a 408. I normally don't recommend that. I don't recommend that with boost. When guys are running boost on something, maybe on a 4.8, do a bigger bore on it, maybe put just make it into a 5.3 would be better, or put a 5.7 piston in it, and you could do that. I just don't like going that big on the bore. The thing is, and this is why guys before I did the first big bang on the 6 liter, that's why people were telling you, oh, the 5.3 makes more power than the 6 liter because you won't blow head gaskets. Well, we didn't blow head gaskets with a 6 liter. The 6 liter certainly made more power. Now we could have turned the boost up more, but the argument is that there's more space in between the cylinders because of the bore size, because the bore spacing is the same on both those motors, that there's more space in there, so it seals better. I don't know that that's the sealing problem right there. I think that there are other problems that we get to long before that's an issue, and the Big Bang motor certainly showed that, or all of the Big Bang motors certainly showed that. So I don't recommend it with boost. I usually don't recommend it with boost with other stuff too. Maybe the exception there is a 302 Ford. Like it seems to be better with a 331 or a 347, and it makes better power and yada yada yada. But again, if we can get to the point where we're going to break the block on a 302 anyway with a turbo or something, do you really need to have more than? Do you really need to have a 347 to do that, or a 331 or whatever? Probably not. In that case, what I normally recommend if on the Ford, small block Ford, is put a 351 in it. It's better in every way. It's bigger. It's not going to break. It's stronger. It will last. Yeah, it's a little heavier, but it's just better. It's a better thing in every way. And then your decision is, should I go to a 383, 392, 408 kind of thing? And again, with a turbo deal, I normally don't recommend that. But those are all very common, and usually, so I set aside the boost things, particularly turbos, more so I would say with centrifugal blowers, because centrifugal blowers have a rising boost curve, so the added torque can help that. So a bigger motor with a centrifugal blower obviously can be a good idea. And again, all of this depends on what your power goals are. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What is the thing that you need to do? Like, we've got a 5.3 LS, and you want to make 700 at the tire or whatever. That's just a cam and springs and turbo, the right injectors and a tune and stuff. So it's really, really easy to do. You don't have to go all out into all of this stuff. I need ported heads. I need this manifold, and I'm going to make it a 383. And you don't need to do any of that. Just here's an easy way to achieve that. But on naturally aspirated combinations, if you want to make power, a 383 on an LS is going to make more power than a 5.3. It's just bigger. It's just bigger and better. So if you want to do an NA thing and you're trying to make more NA power, you either have to go with a lot more RPM, like on a 4.8 or a 5.3, or you go with more displacement. And then obviously, and you could go with more RPM if you wanted to cam it and intake it and head it so that it can do that with the added displacement. But the nice thing, and the thing that I normally think about when I'm thinking about like stroker motors, and it doesn't matter whether it's stroke or bore, in these instances, we're changing both of those. But however you increase the displacement, what I usually think about is, I'm going to get a whole bunch more torque. Like we take a 6 liter LS, or even a 6.2 is even a better example, because if we put a cam in one of those, and especially if it has even better than stock cylinder heads or something, you can make a lot of power. I mean, you can get between 550 and 600 horsepower just with the right camshaft. And so you can make a lot of power. Now, on a 408, you make more power, but you also have to have the other things to go along with that. With the 408, it's going to need more cylinder head. It's going to want more camshaft if you're going to want to make power at that same kind of RPM range. It might also want a different intake manifold, again, to make power at that kind of RPM range. So all of those things would have to be considered. But on a 6.0 and a 6.2, you know, if you're trying to make and this is what happens a lot of times. It happens with 4.8s and 5.3s too. Is like, hey, look, I'm trying to make, you know, a good NA running motor now, because later on in a year or two or whenever that is, I can afford it, I'm going to add boost. Okay, well, just do that. You don't need to do a 408 for that. You don't need to do a 383 for that. Just do that. Put a cam in it. If you're, you know, maybe do heads. If they're going to do turbo later on, I usually don't recommend that they do heads either. But so mostly on NA builds, yeah, that's good. You have more power potential if you have the other things to go along with that can feed that extra displacement. But the thing that you always get is a lot more low speed power. And let's face it, when you're driving down the road and you stomp on the gas, that's the thing that you're feeling. You know, unless you did downshifts 2 gears and you're up at 5,000, you run from 5,000 to 7,000. Most people's trucks or whatever cars are not set up that way. So when you stomp on the gas, or you're rolling into the gas, or you just want to, you know, merge up ahead of the guy so that you could be first in line or whatever you're doing, then that's just torque. And that's the nice thing that a stroker does for you. Whether it's a 347, way more torque than a 302. 351, 383, 393, 408, even more torque still, even better for like, hey, let's roll into this thing and let's have some fun, let's party. And also, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to go to the place where it's making 550 horsepower with your cam to 6-liter. You know, you can get the 550 foot-pounds of torque out of the 408, because it'll do that a lot earlier, and it will be fun. You'll be able to spin the tires. You'll be able to go to Cars and Coffee or whatever you're doing, you know, do a burnout contest. I don't know what you have planned for it. But these are all the things that swirl around in my head when people are asking me, hey, Richard, I got this combination. Should I, you know, should I make a 383 out of it? Because what the thought process is, hey, like I have a 5.3. Okay, we know be better than that is a 383. Yes, it is. But that's not the only consideration. To what is the, get past the 383 thing, got a 5.3 or 4.8. What is the goal after that? Like, again, how much power do you want to make? Let's just go right over that. Just add the turbo, add a GTX 3584 RS turbo for 800, and then, or the G42 for 1200, and you can get there with the motor that you have. You don't have to spend, because a stroker motor is not a cheap deal. I mean, if you're buying a new crank rods and pistons, that's not cheap. You're gonna have to machine block. Again, that's not cheap. And then I don't know. I'd be curious to know how many people, because most of the people I deal with don't take a 4.8 or a 5.3 and make it into a 383 and then just put the stock stuff on top of that. I've seen that done, but the only times I've seen that done is, and I don't think it was on LS. I may have done that because I'm dumb like that. But I remember seeing that back in the day. Magazine guys have done that in the past, but only to start it as a baseline. So we had a stock motor of a stock displacement, and then they took the stock motor out and put the bigger motor in, like went from a 350 to a 383, or from a 305 to a 330 something, whatever that came out to be, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever it was, and then just put the stroker underneath that, and then still topped it with all the stock stuff. The problem is that's like woefully disappointing. I did that on a 5-liter Ford. We had the stock stuff on a 5-liter Ford, and then we put a 347 underneath it. It's like, it doesn't really make a whole bunch more power than the 302 did. I mean, it made more torque because in that area, the heads will support that power level, because it's only making, you know, 200 horsepower, let's say, down there, which is a lot of torque at that RPM range. And so the torque for the 347 is, it's going, hey, look, I've got almost 50 more cubic inches, or 45 more cubic inches. So I'm going to make more torque here. And here you have the airflow with those junky 5-liter heads. And then in this case, the stock cam and stock intake manifold. All of those things are at least reasonable at that RPM to supply kind of what I need. I mean, once we put good stuff on there, the torque goes way up, even down low, and it goes up. It's better everywhere, but at least it's not terrible down there. So when you have the displacement, you know, especially down there, you're going to get more torque. And that's one of the main things that I like about going up in displacement. and why I usually recommend them for guys that are doing like NA builds, and that holds true for a lot of stuff. I mean, if we look at even like we look at Hondas, a B18 is better than a B16, and the only thing better than a B18 is B20, you know. And then if you could get bigger than that, a K20 is even better. But if you, I remember the first time I saw the power curves on a 2-liter, an LS VTEC, which I'd done plenty of B16s. I had done at that time plenty of non-VTEC B18s, and then the B18 C5s, the GSRs and the Type Rs. But then the first time we did a B20, I'm like, oh, look, this is like, you know, better everywhere, because the Honda had already had way more airflow than it needed to support that power level. And then if you put cams in it, and you had a Type R intake manifold on there, you know, it just had enough to support all of that. And so it was better down low, it was better in the middle. You know, what happened was, because that has VTEC, is like I showed you the other day, is that the Honda torque curve is essentially flat. It's kind of flat down here, and it gets a little bump of the VTEC thing as it carries it out for a long ways, which is why the horsepower curve climbs so much, and it makes good power at 8,000 RPM, because the torque curve's flat, but it's flat way out in the RPM range. And then what doing the bigger displacement does is still doing that. It's just everything's raised up, and it's just better. And so when you have, you know, torque in a VTEC Honda, it's kind of awesome. Let's see what you guys got going on for today. This is an amazing title. Yeah, I thought that there'd be people that like that. My wife asked the same question. When do you need to replace the crank anyway? Yeah, well, you do if it's a stroker deal. If it's just a bore size, you can do it with rods and pistons. But if you're changing the stroke length, obviously that's going to have to change too. Hit the like button. I'm a borer myself. Does that mean we're boring? High rev and high compression is the worst stroking a 5.3 LS. Yes, it can make good power, like I talked about NA. I don't recommend it with a turbo though. It's not. I mean, you can. It's just not really necessary. Valve train makes high revs. Didn't you do a video on that a while ago? I came here for the title. Yeah, it's good stuff. 351 Cleveland gets another 50 cubic inches. Next time it gets rebuilt, that would be good. We've done 383, and I'm thinking we did I don't know if we've done a 408 Cleveland. I did do a 408. Well, I did a 408 Clevor, not a Cleveland. So your power cones on the site. It doesn't say what size the pipe is. Can you tell me the inlet and outlet size of them, please? We have two of them. One goes from 3 to 3.5. The other one goes from 3.5 to 4. And what they're designed for, Terry, is one's designed for our GTX 3584 RS turbo that has a 3-inch V-band outlet, and we step that up to 3.5, so you can put a 3.5-inch exhaust on that, because it makes more power if you do that. And then the other one is 3.5 to 4. And that's for the V-band that comes with the G42 turbo, which is 3.5. And then you step that up and you can put a 4-inch exhaust on it. Anytime the oil pan comes off, that's when you need to change the stroke. Stroke of 427, a 5.3 to 427. You can do that if you sleeve the block. Otherwise, not recommended. Jack Stan, you just got here. Is it worth stroking a 5.3 LS? And what's the biggest you can stroke it? You can make a 383 out of it. If you put a 4-inch stroke in it and then you put a 3905 bore in it, that makes a 383. You can physically put a longer stroke in it, but it pulls the piston out of the bottom of the cylinder, and you don't want to do that. So 383 is what 99% of the people would do. You can't go to 427 on a 5.3 unless you sleeve it. I'm here because Richard's big brain. You're going to be woefully disappointed. He knows a thing or two. He knows at least 2 things. Wouldn't you want the biggest stroke you can get away with? I'm thinking more stroke is more better. That depends. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. I just want to melt tires. Yep. Big stroke will do that. It'll help you. You have to do cylinder sleeves to build a 427 out of a 5.3. Yeah. And actually, if you sleeve a 5.3 block, we did a 468 out of one of those. 393 is the easiest stroker to build on a budget. I know that concept. Don't go together. Trust the displacement. Can you tell people that the 5.3 is stronger and better? I'd like to sell my 5.3 and buy a 6-liter and make a profit. So you want me to put that out there to help with the viability of your 6-liter? I think you got to change 5.3 sleeves, make it 427. Yeah, you gotta be able to put bore in it, and you have to have sleeve length too. But if you can think about a turbo 350 for the street, yep. I think with a turbo, you can make all of the power that the 350 will make. So that's not a problem. You don't need a 383. Hopefully building a 5.3 with Texas Speeds Brawler 332 rotating assembly. Twin turbo 400, and Camaro. What's a 332? That's not that much bigger than the 325 that it is stock. So are they just boring it out? They're just putting is that a 4-inch bore on it, or a 392 bore, or the 3905 bore, or the 3902? Leave it at 350 if you're going to boost it. Yep. Just need to figure out what cam I want. Yep. Just got to figure out what you want out of your cam NA, and then add boost. Does it matter what side you put the turbo on? No, it doesn't. I have a block looking forward to getting a 258 crank to put in it. 305 has the same rods as a 350. Smaller piston in the 305 will allow more RPM. Really? You think that the piston size and weight is the limiting factor? A 30/302 Chevy, not a 305. Low end torque, wide power band. Get to buy a sweet new crank and knife edge it. Strokers are better. They get into coatings like Impreglon 218. No gains by practice theory. It's good. You don't get any gains, but you just like doing it. Is that what the deal is? Planning for my 5.7 Vortec. Cam choices and duration recommendations. Stroke and turbo for towing in a Silverado. Is it an L31, like that kind of Vortec? I don't really think you're going to need a 383 out of that. You can, but I don't think you're going to need that with a turbo, unless you want to do like a low compression 383 and then run like 7 or 8 pounds on it for towing. Holy cow, you're live. That's right. Measure my piston to deck clearance and got 259 thousandths. Any reason? Have them all roughly that measurement? Are you, Loadmaster, are you saying that the piston is 259 thousandths down in the hole? Like it's a 1/4 of an inch down in the hole? And what motor is this? It sounds like the rod length is wrong, or the piston compression height's wrong, or the stroke is wrong. 799 heads on a 408 stroker. Like, is that a 4.8 crank with a 5.3 rod in it? $799 heads on a 408 stroker. How about with a Gen 3 truck intake and a smaller truck throttle body? It'll have a Vortec blower, so I'm hoping it'll flow. Trailblazer SS will be better, but my intercooler setup would need to change. And yeah, stock 799 heads would be limiting on a 408. The truck intake's fine. If all you're trying to do is get torque, and then you have a Vortec on it, well, what kind of cam are you putting in this thing? And how much power are you trying to make? I think at 351, looking to get 650 horsepower for a Fox body. What compression are you recommending? Are you doing it as a 351? Because building a 650 horsepower 351 is a whole different build than building a 650 horsepower 408 out of the 351. I heard a wild story about a 5.3 making 1,000 horsepower before boost. Is that on like a couple of hits of nitrous? Should a 6-liter stroke 408 plus a small turbo built for maximum torque use the low buck truck, the truck plus cam, or the low buck truck cam? what else are you trying to do with it? Like, what's the other part of the curve? Like, if you're towing, let's say that's up to, I don't know, 4,500 or 5,000. Like, what are you trying to do after that? And do you want this thing to work with a stock converter and stuff? 408, you could use either one of the cams probably with a stock converter. On stock LQ4, do I need to raise compression if I want to put a 150 shot of nitrous on it? No. The nitrous doesn't care about compression. It just adds to whatever's there. With that cubic inch, you start with a big turbo. Down at an SN95, I'm thinking, for reasonably cheap in Australia. It's a Windsor one. Yeah, an SN95 would be. Buying forged rotating assembly for my 6-liter, 30 over, 408, or keep it 370, turbo streetcar. I don't think you need to go with a 408. If it's a streetcar, you're just going to have just more traction problems. Is stock bottom end 351 Cleveland able to make 500 horsepower with heads, cam, and intake manifold? Yes. Yeah, they have really good heads for those. So that's making 500 horsepower. In fact, I think you could get a good bit more than that. It'd be a big cam, but I was wondering what exactly the sleeve did to make a 427. Thank you for enlightening me. Yeah, the problem is if you put, first thing you'd want to do on a 427, normally it's a 4125 bore. So that's what the factory did on an LS7. So it's a 4125 bore, same bore center as all the other ones, but just a bigger bore. So if you sleeve it, it allows you to go out to that bore size. The sleeve also is longer than the factory sleeve is. So when you put your 4-inch stroke, which is what you would have, I think it's a 4-inch stroke and a 4125 bore. Yeah. And then if you have that stroke, you just don't want to pull the piston down out of the bottom of the hole. Stroke it when it's undersquared. Stroke when it's undersquared. I don't go by undersquare and oversquare. The big thing for me is displacement. And then undersquare and oversquare to me is like arguing about rod ratio. A guy with a 5.3 should tell people it's a 4.8 stroker. I would do that, definitely. Quarter-inch in the hole. It's a 60 over 350. I'd built in my first deployment. Gutless pig with 42-inch tires. Well, it would be terrible with it that far down. It's making no compression at all. It makes me wonder if it's the wrong rod length. If that piston that you have should be working with a 6-inch rod and not a 5.7 or something. Should I keep this 302 stock with the eBay turbo and 6 PSI and sell it and buy a 351 and do an NA build? I just want 400 horsepower. Your 302 should be making 400 horsepower with 6 PSI, right? Does it have anything done to it? I mean, can't you just put the turbo on the 351? Scrolling. 89 Silverado, 5.7 Vortec, but don't know the model year for towing. Okay, it's an 89. Okay. How are you doing the fueling on it? Judge me not. How are you? Is this thing throttle body injected? Is it carbureted? How are you getting the fuel, and what management system are you using to run the turbo? Kyle, I agree. Is this reason for a 402, 428 LS stroker? NA streetcar with nitrous. That would be another thing that I would. That's a good point. When we were talking about making NA power with a stroker, if you add nitrous to that and you're adding it to a 600 horsepower motor rather than a 500 horsepower motor, you just are starting higher and then you have more power. Richard, thank you for the turbo step pipe video. I was wondering if that could work with Boom. You had made a video. Oh, if you wonder if it would work, okay. Just picked up 2 Gen 6 454s. Nice. What budget turbos do you recommend for 1,000 horsepower street build? I'm planning on using the stock heads and chirp block with a mild cam. Andrew, you should get a single G42 turbo that we have. They'll do 1,200, which will be easy to do 1,000 horsepower on your 454. Any advantage to divided hot side on a twin scroll turbo? I don't know about on a V8. I have seen tests where it's beneficial on a 4-cylinder, but I don't know that it would be on a V8. I've never tested a completely divided setup where it's divided all the way up to the turbo, including, as I saw from that video before that I was talking about yesterday, is the wastegate also has to be divided. 2014 Camaro L99, would it be able to turbocharge it on a stock cam? Yes. Current wheel horsepower is 350. Would it be able to squeeze 700 out of it? The turbo will certainly support that much. Whether or not to double that, you'd be having to run 15 pounds of boost. And if you were trying to do that on E85, then yes, you would be able to do that. If you're trying to do that on pump gas, that's going to be very hard because you just won't be able to have enough timing and boost in it to be able to do that. But you want to have a good sized turbo. You want to have an intercooler. You want ideally E85. You're going to have big injectors and a big pump to do that. But otherwise, yeah, just if you run 15 pounds, it'll just double the power output if you have octane and timing. Richard, you should have somebody on here explaining how a distributor works. How it relates to engine timing demands is a much needed topic. I don't think that the way a distributor works needs to be explained. I think that's a separate thing from why we need timing at different engine speeds. And I've shown what timing does on these tuning videos that I did where we ran it at 20 degrees and 22 and 24, 26, 28, 30, whatever. We've shown them what timing does. Do you want me to talk about a like vacuum advance and centrifugal advance or the aspects of a distributor? Is pretty, I mean, I don't think I need to get somebody else to do that. Is there approximate cam spec and cylinder head you would guess that would make 500 horsepower 351? To make 500 horsepower, the ideal situation would be for you to find cylinder heads that flow 300 CFM. My guess is that's out there, given that factory 351 Cleveland heads flow 275. So 275 will already support 500 horsepower, even with stock heads. So we know that there are much better heads out there. I don't know what a set of Trick Flow or Edelbrock 351 Cleveland heads flow or the Speedmaster ones. The CHI, the 3V stuff would easily do it. And then the camshaft you're going to need, if you're going to run a flat tappet cam, is probably going to be in the 240s, I would imagine. And it's going to have roller rockers on it. And hopefully the chamber size will be enough that this is not a low compression 351. I have a 351 Boss engine, 9.5 deck. It's a Z460 crate motor. It makes 575 horsepower and 575 foot-pounds. Is a 351 Boss engine the name of the engine, but it's actually a 460 engine? Is that what you're talking about? Because 575 horsepower and 575 foot-pounds is going to be a difficult deal with a 351. Sounds like a 327 crank on a 350. What's a good setup with a 351 to make 650? Just a streetcar? 351 what? A Windsor? Just a decent heads, like an Airflow Research Enforcer head and a mild cam, and then boost and some kind of intake manifold. But an NA one would be a really, really high RPM dry sump, like exotic headed tunnel ram thing. I delete my last comment because of bad grammar. But either 4V and a 91 Mustang and have the 302 T5 I like to put in my Mark II Supra. It's sitting in my parking lot. Is a good combination an LQ4 with 243 heads and a Trailblazer SS with nitrous? Yes. 350 pistons and a 327. Yeah, I think that there's some mixing and matching going on. The quarter-inch down's a lot. I'm willing to replace a 544 valve. I think it should be pretty easy to get 500 horsepower with a 544 valve, though. Scrolling. Got an 02 Chevy 2500 6-liter, trying to pull my new fifth wheel. Should do it stock, but thinking of camming for a little more power, not wanting to do a converter if I don't have to. Yeah, on a 6-liter, I would put the low buck truck camshaft in it, because that's going to make the most power in the area that you want it for what you're doing. Have to just wanting a little gains. I got a 6-liter turbo E85 square body, making 800, not wanting to go down the rabbit hole again, just something simple. It sounds like you already have a good combination there, right, Nicholas? Currently TBI, but I would have to change that to some type of MPI, like an Edelbrock. Yeah. Still in the planning stages. Yeah, throttle body is definitely not going to get you there for fuel. I guess my question is, should I do an eBay turbo and keep the long block stock? I just want Lemons Race, the Mark II, and keep it cheap, but at 400 horsepower. It wouldn't be 350 pistons and a 327 crank. That's only an eighth. It would have to be 350 pistons and a 302 crank. That would put a 240 down. And a 5.7 and a 6.0 rod would be 300 down. Richard, did you do a big bang 4.3 liter? I did not. Can you build a 555 stroker out of a Chevy block? Not out of a production block, unless you sleeve it, because you can't put enough bore in it. You have to do a 4,500 bore block, like a 502 block, or an aftermarket Dart, that kind of thing. Never done cheap turbo, but don't know how reliable it is. Would be for Lemons, or would it be better to sell 302 and get a 351 with a cam? I think if I was racing endurance stuff, I don't think I would go turbo route. I think I would go NA route if I was doing that. Larry, it's a 460. Okay, that makes more sense. Max power estimate on a 12.5 to 1 stock bore 6-liter with 799s and a carb. I don't have any idea. There's no way to even guess at that. The stock heads are going to limit it. And I don't know what intake you're talking about. I don't know what size carburetor you have. The compression helps a bit, but the head is going to be the thing that holds you back. And honestly, the intake manifold is going to hold you back too. There's a 460 Ford small block stroker kit. Yeah, I've seen that. I've tested 460 351 base 460 motors before. Ford racing engine. They made it from their boss. 351 block, 425 bore. Yeah, no, I got you. I don't see the logic in building a stroker 485 turbo motors for the street. Even an S475 for it will be traction limited. Yep. Although, man, who would put a T6 S475 on a 4.8? Saw a couple 351 Windsors with LS heads on it. And you put regular small block Chevy intakes on LT1s. Why not just leave out the center 2 bolts on each side? You can. Kurt is building a Cleveland LT right now. 351 Clevelands are relatively cheap here, even when buying upgraded heads, cam intake. Oh, because are you in Australia? Is that why? You're gonna 468. You're gonna be firing up your LS tomorrow. Heads cam and intake. Cool. My square body definitely has the drivetrain, but I don't know if I trust the chassis. It's a half-ton Ford's engine, 76, 75 precision, built 4L80, but the frame probably wouldn't be happy with 10,000 pounds. Oh yeah. Let me see here. I don't remember if the G42 is water cooled or not. We didn't run it on the dyno that way if it was, but honestly don't remember. Just send Jimmy an email. Okay, here we go. Here's the center section. Does not look like it is. No, I'm only seeing the oil in and out. 454 board, 125 over, and a 4.5 stroke would be 540. I'll look into that low buck truck cam, maybe some springs, push rods, trunnion kit, new gaskets, 260,000 miles, has great oil pressure, runs great. Don't want to touch it too much. Anybody hear about using sealant on LS intake bolts when using AFR enforcer heads? The sealant on the intake bolts? That's a good idea on any LS. And the reason that you do that is because it goes down into the, you'll have oil come up out of there, and you'll also have a vacuum leak. Also on the, what am I thinking of? I'm trying to visualize that head. When you're doing the rocker bolts, Richard, I have a 5.3 LS with the 4L80. What can I do to make it a fun street motor? I want to light the tires, but don't want to be slow. You can do all of the stuff that we talked about. You can put a cam in it, springs, injectors, put a turbo on it, put one of the 3584 turbos on it. We speak fluent Cleveland in Australia. What oil is good break-in oil with zinc or additive oil for a 5.3 LS? There are lots of guys that have break-in oil. We use the Lucas stuff a lot. The Driven stuff is good. You can get other break-in stuff at the auto parts stores. With the Boss 302 4V head Ford, can the cam be installed at 102 degrees and get much more mid-range and up to 400? Must I stay with the 114 lobe separation angle? I don't know what cam you're talking about. Are you talking about a stock cam? Or are you talking about an aftermarket cam? But a Boss 302, if you take a look at my video, the factory cam is not a very big cam, and it made as good low speed power as the DZ302 did. Watching from the Philippines, what's going on, man? You guys do it up over there. Who makes good header gaskets for 821 heads? We reuse the factory ones all the time. We reuse the MLS like steel ones, and we have some that we hang up on the wall, and we've used them hundreds and hundreds of times. Seems like a lot of folks just ignore your advice of not needing exotic parts. Head boost, get on the road. Yeah, it'll be fun. Just watching the boost gauge swing over is just awesome. We are all doing good. Off topic, what happened to the K24 Big Bang? It's still over at the guys at Skunks. I need to contact Dave over there. either stock or custom grind. Well, when you do a custom grind, if you're trying to tighten up the LSA, you're going to have to check piston valve clearance. I don't know if you have valve reliefs in the pistons that you have, but that's always a natural thing to check when you're putting that combination together. It all gets mocked up and checked before you do final assembly. Has anyone seen Chevy 6.2 recall for rod bearing issues? They're fixed to change the oil to 040. Filter and change. Fill the cap says 040. How is that a change then? Crankshaft main bearing journal size, I'd imagine, is of great importance for strokers. Lots of sizes to choose from. Why is the main bearing journal size important? The GTX 3584 RS turbo, and will I be able to make 500 wheel horsepower with that turbo? You'll actually be able to make a lot more than that. We've ran that turbo at 800, more than 800 flywheel horsepower, so it's going to be good. Yeah, 500 will not be a problem at all. That will be low boost. Hello, can you go? Lots of people like to quote cool parts made out of unobtainium by some cool name company rather than build things that just work. Yeah, we get that. I was talking to Jimmy when I was catching that snake today. Guys like to read off like this shopping list of stuff. So we were talking about the dual ball bearing stuff, and a dual ball bearing turbo has like, let's see. Can you see there? There you go. See if I can get that. That's a good one. Bring him into the sun. He was good. He was really strong. He was in good shape. He worked out, man. He was gangster. It's what they used to do in Group C touring cars and spin them up to 10,000 RPM. I'm sure I believe that rumor, but they were early engines. The Australian touring stuff was, those things are gangster. Those things are serious, and have been for a really, really long time. That's like cutting edge, V8 stuff. Just on the piston to valve drama with a 108, 107 LSA cam. My LS1 had 199 and 113. Yeah, the LSA is not the only thing that determines that. Our low buck truck camshaft has a 107 LSA. It has miles of piston to valve clearance. It's a Band-Aid. They claim the thicker oil from 020 will prevent damage to the crank and bearings. Photosynthesis. Do you prefer power valves or no power valves and a tunnel ram engine? I'm thinking that I need to go back and look. We've run them with both, because what we're doing is wide open throttle stuff. So we can get to the fueling either way with jetting or power valves. It's not, it doesn't really matter. We just jet accordingly. But I don't remember, because Holly at one time, I'm sure on one of the tests, sent us tunnel ram specific carburetors, and I'm curious to see which way they came now. Distribute load for improved strength and durability, especially in small block forward for main bearing size choice question. No, I understand what changing the diameter does. My point isn't that. My point is that that's like 57th or 89th of the things that I would be talking about or worried about when I was doing a stroker. It wouldn't even really make a conversation. Not for any of these kind of motors that we're talking about. Start with NASCAR technology, mix in Formula One technology. NASCAR has got plenty of technology. Is a sprint engine being a 3-cylinder balanced very well? Yes. It's full race, man. It's a sprint turbo. It's the best engine ever. I can't wait. It's just when I take them apart like that. Makes me want to clean them. They're like, look at this. It's got stuff all over the pistons. It's got stuff all over the deck. I just want to, I really could. I could just sand it and put it back together. I would need to take the head in and have a valve job. Although I might be able to, I don't want to do that. I might be able to edge that valve myself. I don't know that I could get it right with just like polishing compound. I don't know that this one will clean up. I think it's going to have to be cut. Now let me ask this turbo or torque storm for an LS. Yeah, you could pick either one of those. There isn't you're asking it, and you've been coming here enough now where you should know that you're asking it that as though there's some answer that one of those is inherently better than the other one. A turbo at any given boost level will make more power than any supercharger because it doesn't have power loss to driving the supercharger. A torque storm has a rising boost curve. A turbo won't have that. So it's all a function of what you like and what you want your power curve to look like. Do you still do magazine work? There really aren't any magazines that I write for. Hot Rod would be the only one that I would do stuff for, but I haven't really reached out to anybody to do that anymore. I'm way too busy with the stuff that I'm doing. NASCAR Tech is crazy. Yeah, I think that the perception of what fancy technology is, like Formula One stuff, and what NASCAR is, and I don't think people realize what goes on there. I mean, look what the NASCAR did at Le Mans. It gives you a pretty good idea. Those guys are really good, and my favorite example of that was when Motor Trend or Car and Driver Road and Track did the shootout between the 962 Porsche and the Cup car. This was back in the 80s, and brought them out for like a top speed shootout. And I think that the Porsche went high 220s or something. The Cup car just went out and went, okay, let's just go like 239 or 240 or whatever it did. And then I don't know if they're smart, they put a hot engine in there, a non-restrictor motor or what, something that was making lots of steam. And then they did that. And the Porsche guys tried to put the long tail on it and do all kinds of stuff. Not how much power they had. And that thing had a lot more downforce, obviously, than a Cup car does. But it was just an interesting thing that, all of them, because I remember back then it was like, we called them all the wine and cheese guys, because that's what those car magazines were. And I'm a huge fan, but because I memorized all of the 0-60 times and quarter mile times and top speed times and all that stuff as I was growing up, because it was awesome stuff. But it was cool to see that Cup car just go out and go, hey, look how fast I can go. Okay, now I'll see you later, man. My favorite version of the Cosworth DFV is the IndyCar DFX, basically a single turbo version of it. People always underestimate NASCAR. I have an old Jeff Bodine Cup car that I had set up for a road course. I love it versus any of my other purpose-built cars. Finding air in the restrictive motors is insane. So many of the hidden tricks. Yeah, restrictor motors, that's them doing what they do is pretty impressive. How many horsepower have NASCAR guys get used to these days? I don't know what a current Cup motor makes. If I throw a 5.3 crank and a 5.7, do I need to have it balanced? They're the same crank, but I don't know if they're balanced differently. Let's say the NASCAR Tech isn't moving as forward as it could. They're trying to limit the power to keep the cars from flipping over and going into the crowd. They only make 650. Is everything restricted though, Dan? Like is a road course car restricted? Yeah, Neil, that's good. They can easily make 900. Yeah. On Speedmaster ITB, I've been working on. I've been told to tune to Alpha N. We've done it both ways, but the ITB that we ran, I thought that we connected all of them together, or that it had a common thing underneath in the middle of the manifold. It had a common plenum that we could draw the map sensor from, if I remember right. And then we just used a map sensor. We were making 900 back in the day. That's kind of where I thought that they would be. Did they limit? They were limiting RPM too, right, Dan? Weren't they? Because I thought that Mark Martin or somebody showed up with one from Ilmore that was like 10,000 RPM or something like that, and they immediately made him take it apart. Is that what this? Is that the story that I heard? Yeah, grease spot. I remember that as being. I mean, the tuners could run it in Alpha N, and for a wide open throttle thing like we're doing, it's very easy. It doesn't matter. It's just like, hey, it's doing this, and we just tuned it here, and it does the thing that we want it to do. It's very easy. But I thought that that was one of the upgrades that they did, that guys did in to these IR setups anyways, is we had drilled them and tapped them and just ran like T-fittings to a common thing for the map sensors so that they all had something. But I thought that they made a common manifold with basically just drilled vacuum lines going down there so that they all had, you're reading all the cylinders. They mandate gear ratios depending on the track. 900 horsepower and still holding together. Yeah, I mean, for a 500-mile race, that's a lot. Well, but those are restrictor motors, though. $650 is what the current NASCARs have. The old cars have more. My Gen 4 NASCAR has a P7R5 Dodge. 5.8 makes $850. We had some 650 horsepower Cup motors at West Tech, and we were kind of disappointed by it. I mean, they're works of art, but we were disappointed about the power output because we also had some 850 horsepower ones. Right to the point with this one, at least by Mary and her 5 sisters of beer. Mary has 5 sisters. That's a lot. In the 90s, they were rebuilt every race, just like Formula One. Well, and back when they had qualifying motors, it was even cooler because then you could have a super powerful qualifying motor with loft and all of the fancy stuff. The drift guys used to come in and be in awe of those used Cup motors. The way I remember it, the RPM in NASCAR shot up around the time pro stock trucks hit the scene and piggybacked their technology. Yeah, I don't. The guys that are working on Cup engines are pretty, and have been for a long time, are pretty sharp guys. Way sharper than I am. Or how much nitrous a Mercury 200 horsepower V6 can handle, and how many revs. It certainly could do a 100 shot. Probably spent $100,000 buying magazines since I was a kid. I bought them for all the tech articles. Now you're here and you wrote half of them. I did write a lot. I was prolific. I've done a bunch of stuff. Cool though. That's because I love testing, man. Remember the old Hendrick shop had rows of ready to go Cup engines, too high and too wide, at least 100 when I was there. They probably went through a lot of them, and if they were supplying them to more than one team, then it takes about 20 minutes just to start up with the NASCAR to heat the oil and cool it up before the starting. I know my buddy Bernie was a crew chief, and they had an Aston Martin that was like that. It was a and their maybe, I don't know if their Daytona prototype was like that. I don't think that. That was an LS motor, so I don't think it had that. But some of those road race cars were like that. You had to get the oil warmed up, and you had to circulate it through the heating element and stuff, and before you could start it. And like when they did the Aston Martin, I think that you couldn't start the car without their guy there, their laptop guy. Ballpark number for 1,200 horsepower LQ4 for the street. A ballpark number of what? Are you talking about cost or what? I don't know what you're talking about. We had plug-in heaters in the dry sump tanks. Richard, have you ever worked on Yates head? I don't think I have. I think I've seen a couple when I've been at people's porting shops, but I don't think I've ever run anything with a head like that. Aiden, I don't have any idea on cost. Just go through and list everything that you need. A 1,200 horsepower deal is that G42 turbo. I just don't know about all of the fittings and hoses and lines and that kind of stuff, like the intercooler couplings and the tube and all that stuff. But you've got cam, springs, lifters, pump, turbo, whatever you're going to do for the turbo kit. I don't know what that is. They use compacted graphite iron blocks to save weight. Cool technology. I'm sure aluminum blocks would have been chosen given rules. 1,200 horsepower worth of heat coming out of that NASCAR engine going to waste. They were pretty good at. They were really good at sciencing out exactly what they needed to do to get the thing to make the most amount of power for the time that they needed to make it, and have the car also be as aerodynamic as possible and work in traffic fairly well. And they had to solve like lots of different problems. It wasn't just like making lots of power or even making lots of power and having it last a long time, because that could be done. But they had a lot of other things going on. Saw something about F1 engine clearances being so tight that the engine won't even rotate until it's up to temperature. I wonder why they're running it so tight. Do they not want deflection or something? We got 1 more minute, and I never even had a poll, man. Bruno's upset about that. He's like, I mean, you've been here an hour. I don't know why you don't have a poll. You could have had that very easily. I want to clean the engine off. I want to clean the engine bay too. I got a steam cleaner. Well, also having tech inspectors bamboozled, yeah. Bearings on F1 engines are not too different to Honda stuff for tolerances. All right, Kyle, man, we'll see you later. Thanks for the kind words. Look, look at it on this side, back up here. I got the Pacific and the red hat all together. Aluminum blocks move around too much. Yeah, that makes sense. They should have used L33s, Dan, because that solves everything. But on that note, it is time to go. Who knows? Maybe more snakes tomorrow. I'm excited. It's just snake season. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.